My son broke my nose because I refused to hand him the $850,000 from selling my ranch. He thought fear would make me surrender. But the next morning, I made one decision that exposed every lie and changed our family forever. My daughter-in-law looked at the blood running through my fingers and said, "You'll be dead soon anyway." My son stood beside her with his fist still clenched, waiting for me to surrender the $850,000 I had earned over 40 years. What neither of them understood was that the blow that broke my nose also broke the last excuse I had been making for them. Before the next day ended, the money would be beyond their reach, their threats would be documented, and the word family would never again be enough to make me hand over my life. Before we go further, please subscribe to support at When Family Breaks One. Your support helps this channel continue telling stories about betrayal, boundaries, and healing. I am Belinda Patterson, and I was 62 when my only son stopped seeing me as his mother. The ranch had sold weeks earlier for $850,000. To Ross and his wife, Brier, that number looked like an inheritance arriving early. To me, it looked like the first peaceful night I might have in decades. I had spent 40 years waking before sunrise, repairing fences, nursing sick cattle, balancing bills, and praying one broken machine would not take everything from us. My husband, David, and I built the ranch when we were young enough to think exhaustion was temporary. We borrowed equipment, patched the roof ourselves, and counted progress in seasons instead of paychecks. By the time I decided to sell, my knees hurt whenever a storm approached. My fingers were stiff every morning. I was tired of failing machinery and tired of wondering whether one medical emergency could leave me dependent on someone else. Selling was not abandoning the past. It was choosing to have a future of my own. I planned to buy a smaller home for myself, save for healthcare, invest cautiously, and perhaps travel. I had also told Ross that I would consider helping with a reasonable down payment after I understood what I needed for retirement. That was not enough. Ross and Brier lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in Denver. It was safe and comfortable, but Brier called it humiliating. She wanted a house in Cherry Hills with tall windows, a formal dining room, and a large nursery. They were not poor. Ross worked in finance. Their problem was impatience. The morning everything changed, they arrived without calling. Brier laid 3 real estate listings across my kitchen table as though I had already agreed to purchase one. "This house is perfect," she said. "There's even a room for your visits." My visits. They expected me to use the proceeds from my home to buy theirs, then feel grateful for permission to stay occasionally. "How much are you asking for?" I said. Ross leaned against the counter. "We think it would be smarter if you transferred the ranch money to us. I understand investments better than you do. We could buy the house and make sure you have what you need." "All of it?" "It stays in the family." That phrase sounded generous until I understood the arrangement. I would provide the money. They would control it. Later, I would have to ask for my own security back. "No," I said. "I will discuss helping once my retirement plan is complete. I will not transfer everything." Brier's expression hardened. "You are sitting on almost $1 million while we are trying to start our lives. I have been trying to secure mine." "What are you going to spend it on?" Ross asked. "You live simply." "Security." "You already have a house." "The ranch house was included in the sale. I have to move." Brier folded her arms. "At your age, something small would be easier." There it was again, at your age. Financial control does not always begin with stolen bank cards. Sometimes it begins when someone decides age has reduced your right to choose. They call it concern. They say they know what is best. Your needs shrink while theirs become urgent. "I worked for this money," I said. "I will decide how it is used." Brier laughed. "Learn to share, Belinda. You will be dead soon anyway." "What do you need all that money for?" I looked at her polished nails and expensive bag. "Perhaps you could contribute to your own down payment by getting a job." Ross moved so quickly I barely had time to stand. He grabbed my shoulders and shook me hard enough to make the room blur. "Do not speak to my wife that way. Ross, let go. She is trying to start a family. She does not need the stress of working." "You are hurting me." "Good. Maybe you will finally listen." Then his fist hit my nose. There was a crack, and the kitchen disappeared in white light. I stumbled against the counter. Warm blood ran between my fingers before the pain fully arrived. Brier gasped, but when I looked at her, I did not see horror. I saw satisfaction. "Now look what you made me do," Ross said. That sentence frightened me more than the blow. He had hurt me. Yet within seconds, he had made me responsible. I pressed a dish towel against my face. "You need to leave." "We are not going anywhere until you transfer the money," Brier said. "All of it." My mind became strangely clear. For months, I had told myself Ross was under pressure, that Brier was influencing him, that once they felt secure, they would become kind again. Standing there with blood soaking through the towel, I finally saw what I had refused to name. They did not see me as family. They saw an obstacle between themselves and a bank balance. "Get out," I repeated. Ross stepped closer. "Mom, you are upset. You are old, alone, and you do not understand this kind of money. Let us help you." "By taking it?" "It is not taking," Brier said. "Families share." I walked toward the wall phone. "You have 60 seconds to leave, or I am calling the police." Ross laughed, but it sounded forced. "You would not call the police on your own son." I began dialing 911. Brier grabbed his arm. "Fine, we are leaving." At the doorway, she turned back. "When you are alone and need us, remember that you chose money over family." "No," I said, though my voice trembled. "I am choosing safety over fear." Ross slammed the door hard enough to shake the windows. I locked it and leaned against the counter. In the dark glass above the sink, I saw a woman I barely recognized. Her hair was disordered, her face swelling, and blood stained the towel. But there was something else in her eyes. Clarity. I went to the emergency room. The doctor treated my injury, photographed the bruising, and recorded what I told him. I did not know what legal steps I would take, but memory was no longer enough. Truth needed a record. That night, I sat in the empty house with an ice pack against my face and remembered Ross at 6, bringing me crushed dandelions. I remembered him following David through the barn in boots 3 sizes too large. I remembered the child who once cried because he had injured a bird. The worst pain was not in my nose. It was realizing part of me still waited for that little boy to return and explain that the man in my kitchen had been someone else. But love cannot protect a person from consequences forever. In my bedroom, beneath a velvet tray in my jewelry box, was a business card I had kept for 6 months. Harold Whitman, attorney at law. 3 years earlier, when Brier began asking detailed questions about the ranch, deed, and inheritance, Harold had helped me prepare a protective financial plan. I had hoped never to need it. Ross was my son. Surely blood still meant something. That belief had left the house with him. I called Harold's emergency number. He answered on the 4th ring. "Mrs. Patterson?" "Harold, it is Belinda." He heard my voice and stopped asking ordinary questions. "Are you safe?" "For tonight." "Have you received medical care?" "Yes." "Then tell me what you need." I looked toward the kitchen, where the blood had been cleaned but the memory remained. "I need to see you first thing tomorrow." "What happened?" I touched the swelling beneath my eyes. "It is time to use the plan we discussed." When I ended the call, fear was still inside me. But it no longer controlled my next decision. Ross and Brier believed violence had finally made me obedient. They had no idea it had made me honest. By sunrise, the fear Ross had left in my kitchen had hardened into a decision, and that decision carried me straight to Harold Whitman's office. Harold was already waiting when I arrived at 8. He had represented ranchers, widows, and small business owners for more than 30 years, and he had a way of listening that made people slow down enough to hear themselves clearly. He looked at the bruising beneath my eyes, but did not ask whether Ross had meant to hurt me. "Are you safe right now?" he asked. "Yes, I changed the locks before I came." "Did you receive medical care?" "The hospital documented everything." "Good. Sit down, Belinda. We are going to take this one decision at a time." That was the first moment since the confrontation when I felt someone was speaking to me rather than managing me. Ross and Brier had treated urgency like authority. They wanted the money immediately, before I had time to think, ask questions, or speak to anyone independent. Harold did the opposite. He insisted that I understand every document before touching a pen. He opened a thick folder labeled Patterson Family Trust. 3 years earlier, after Brier began asking unusually specific questions about the ranch, I had contacted Harold. She wanted to know whose name appeared on the deed, whether Ross would inherit automatically, and what would happen if I became ill or too old to manage things. At the time, I told myself she was simply curious. Harold had been less comfortable. He helped me establish a revocable living trust and prepare additional instructions for the management of my assets. The documents were not created to punish anyone. They were meant to ensure that my money remained available for my care, and that no one could take control merely by creating pressure around me. "I want you to explain this back to me in your own words," Harold said. I looked over the pages. "The ranch proceeds can be transferred into the trust. I remain the person the trust is designed to benefit. I can use the money according to the terms we established, but Ross and Brier do not gain ownership simply because they expect to inherit someday." "That is correct. And if they challenge it?" "They are allowed to seek legal advice, just as you are. No responsible attorney should promise that a legal document can never be questioned. But this plan was prepared years before the current crisis. You were acting voluntarily, and we documented your intentions at the time." He pointed to another section. "We also included provisions addressing coercion and improper interference. The medical records and police documentation may become important if anyone later claims you were confused or manipulated." I stared at the signature line. For years, I had believed that protecting myself from my own son would be a betrayal. Now I understood that refusing protection had not made Ross kinder. It had only made me easier to pressure. "Once the money is moved," I asked, "can I still use it for my home, healthcare, and retirement?" "Yes, under the structure and instructions we created. This is still your financial plan. It is not a punishment fund, and it should not be treated like one." That distinction mattered to me. I was not trying to ruin Ross. I was trying to stop him from ruining me. Harold reviewed every page. He asked whether I understood the consequences. He asked whether anyone had instructed me to sign. He encouraged me to pause whenever I needed. Only when I could explain the plan clearly did I sign. By 10 o'clock, I was sitting inside the bank manager's office. The balance in my checking account was more than $850,000. When the transfer was complete, only a little over $3,000 remained. The bank manager, Patricia, looked concerned. "Mrs. Patterson, this is a very large transfer." "I know. Are you making it voluntarily?" "Yes. Do you understand where the funds are going?" For the first time, I believe I do. The money had not vanished. It had moved into a structure created for my future instead of someone else's appetite. Watching the balance change produced a strange feeling. I had expected triumph. What I felt instead was grief. It should never have required legal documents, medical photographs, and changed locks for me to feel safe from my own child. After leaving the bank, I stopped at the sheriff's department. The officer who took my statement was a young woman named Sarah. She listened carefully while I described the demand for money, the threats, and the injury. When she referred to what happened as possible elder abuse, I flinched. I did not feel elderly. I felt like a mother who had failed to recognize danger because the danger had once called her mom. But labels can sometimes reveal what love encourages us to minimize. Had a stranger struck me and demanded access to my bank account, I would never have called it a family misunderstanding. I gave Sarah copies of the hospital record and photographs. "Do you want to pursue charges?" she asked. "I'm not ready to decide that today." "That choice is yours. But the report will exist. If they threaten you again, contact us immediately." Documentation did not heal the injury. It gave the truth somewhere to live outside my memory. At noon, I called Ross. He answered immediately. "Mom, I have been thinking about what you said." His voice became cautious. "Are you okay?" "I think we should discuss the money again." There was a pause. Then I heard him cover the phone and speak to Brier. "Seriously?" he asked. "Come by at 7. What should we bring? Just yourselves. I hated the performance, but I needed to know how they behaved when they believed intimidation had succeeded. People often reveal their deepest values when they think they have won. At exactly 7, Ross and Brier arrived carrying a bottle of champagne. Champagne. My face was still swollen, yet they had come prepared to celebrate. Brier wore a black dress and carried a folder filled with real estate listings. Ross attempted to hug me at the door. I stepped aside. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Like someone broke my nose." His smile disappeared for a moment, then returned in a weaker form. Inside the living room, Brier spread the property listings across the coffee table. "We narrowed it down to 3 houses," she said. "This one has the nursery we wanted." "You seem confident," I said. "Ross told me you had reconsidered." "I reconsidered many things." They sat forward. "I realized you were right about one point," I continued. "Family members should take care of one another." Brier smiled. "That is all we wanted you to understand. So I made sure I will be able to take care of myself." I handed Ross the new bank statement. He looked at the balance, blinked, and read it again. "This cannot be right." Brier snatched the paper from his hand. "Where is the ranch money?" "Somewhere safe." "What did you do with our money?" The words came so naturally that I almost missed their significance. Our money. "I must have forgotten the years you spent repairing fences and paying the mortgage," I said. Ross stood. "Mom, this is not funny. Reverse the transfer." "No. You cannot make a decision like this because of one argument. The plan was established 3 years ago." He stared at me. "You planned this against us?" "I prepared for the possibility that someone might try to pressure me. You chose to become that person." Brier's face turned pale, then red. "That money belongs to this family." "It does belong to a member of this family," I replied. "It belongs to me." Ross began pacing. "There has to be a way to challenge it. You may speak with Harold. Any questions about the trust can go through him." Brier leaned forward. "When you are old and need help, remember what you did tonight." That sentence might once have broken me. Many older parents are taught that obedience is the price of future care. Give us access to the accounts. Add our names to the deed. Transfer the house. Otherwise, remember who will be there when you become weak. But help that must be purchased through fear is not love. "I would rather prepare honestly for my future than buy your affection," I said. Ross's face tightened. For a moment, I saw the anger returning. Then his eyes moved toward the security camera above the doorway. He noticed it. So did Brier. "This is not over," he said. "It is over for tonight." They left without opening the champagne. The next morning, my phone showed more than 20 missed calls. The messages began with demands. Then came accusations that Harold had manipulated me. After that, Ross questioned whether I was mentally capable of understanding the trust. Finally, his voice changed. "Mom, Brier is pregnant. We need the money for the baby." I listened to the message twice. A grandchild. The word entered through every weak place in my heart. For several minutes, I imagined a baby in a small apartment. I imagined birthdays I might not be invited to, photographs I might never see, and Ross telling the child that Grandma had chosen money over family. Then I remembered something Harold had said. A legitimate request can survive time, questions, and an independent review. Manipulation needs urgency. Ross arrived at my house that afternoon and waited on the porch. He looked exhausted. "I'm sorry I hit you," he said. "Why are you sorry?" "Because it was wrong." "And what happens if I still refuse to give you money?" His jaw tightened. "We are not asking for everything anymore. Just $50,000 for a down payment." There it was. The apology was not the destination. It was the bridge back to my account. "I accept that you said the words," I replied, "but the answer is still no. You are going to punish your grandchild because you are angry with me? Your family plans cannot depend on money you do not own." Things got heated. It will not happen again. "You are right. It will not happen again because you will not have access to me when you are angry." He left without another apology. As his car disappeared down the road, I understood that protecting the money had been easier than protecting my heart from guilt. Ross and Brier could no longer reach the account directly. Their next attempt would be aimed at the part of me that still wanted desperately to believe we could become a family again. This time, I would not face them alone. Ross and Brier could no longer reach the money, so their next attempt would be aimed at the part of me that still wanted desperately to believe we could become a family again. 3 days later, Ross called from Brier's phone. "Mom, we fired the lawyer," he said. "Brier wants to apologize in person." My first instinct was to refuse. I had already heard apologies that turned into requests and concern that turned into pressure. Then I thought about the way every private conversation had been rewritten afterward. Ross called the assault an argument. Brier called the demand for my money a family discussion. So I agreed to one final meeting. "You may come tomorrow at 10, I said. "Harold will be here. A court stenographer will document the conversation. If either of you raises your voice, threatens me, or touches me, the meeting ends." "Why do we need a stenographer?" "Because the last time we spoke privately, you broke my nose." He went silent. Harold arrived early with Margaret, a court stenographer he trusted. "This is not a trap," he said. "You are creating a safe, documented setting." That mattered. I did not want revenge dressed up as preparation. I wanted the truth spoken where no one could later pretend it had never been said. Brier had changed her appearance completely. She wore a simple blue dress, flat shoes, and almost no jewelry. She looked fragile. "Belinda, I owe you an apology," she began. "What I said was cruel. I was frightened about the pregnancy and our future, but that does not excuse my behavior." Her words were polished, but the cause of her cruelty still remained outside herself. Fear had spoken. Stress had acted. Pregnancy had made the decision. "I hear your apology," I said. "Does that mean we can start over?" "No. It means I heard you." Ross's face tightened. "We came to talk as a family." "So did I, but there are things about this family you do not know." I removed a thick album from the bookshelf and placed it on the coffee table. "What do you remember about your father's death?" I asked. "He had a heart attack in the kitchen. That is what happened to his body." "What do you remember about the circumstances?" "He was drinking coffee. You called the ambulance." I opened the album. The first document described 3 broken ribs. The next recorded a split lip and extensive bruising. Then came photographs. My left eye swollen shut, dark marks across my arms, injuries I once explained as accidents. Ross stared at me. "What is this?" "Your father." "No. David was violent with me for years." I watched his face and remembered why I had stayed silent. Ross had loved David. After the funeral, I wanted him to have a father who died too young, not a father who drank, gambled, and hurt his wife. So I gave him a clean story. "Why didn't you tell me?" he whispered. "Because you were grieving. Because people told me it was cruel to speak badly about the dead. Because I thought protecting your memories was the same as protecting you." I showed him a police report dated 6 months before David died. That was the first time I called the police. He had put me in the hospital. I was preparing to leave him. "You were going to divorce Dad?" "Yes." But then he had the heart attack. During an argument. I told him I was leaving. He had been drinking. He began shouting, then collapsed. Abuse teaches a person to feel responsible for another person's anger, drinking, debts, health, and disappointment. Even after the person is gone, that training remains. Then I opened the financial section. When your father died, he did not leave me a secure ranch. He left approximately $68,000 in debt. "That is impossible," Ross said. "You told me the insurance covered everything." I lied. "Why?" "Because you had just finished college. You had a job waiting in Denver. I did not want your father's failures attached to your future." David had gambled for years. Poker, horse racing, private bets, and cash advances. He had refinanced equipment and mortgaged the ranch so heavily that one poor season could have ended us. I placed a loan agreement in front of Ross. "This is from your great-uncle William." $50,000? Without it, the ranch would have gone into foreclosure. "How did you repay him?" "Slowly. I woke before dawn and worked until dark. I sold part of the herd, repaired equipment that should have been replaced, kept books for neighboring farms at night, and postponed medical care. While Ross built his career, I worked 18-hour days to preserve the place he believed had always been secure. "I thought the ranch was profitable," he said. "I let you think that. You said Dad was good with money." "I let you believe that too." Brier shifted beside him. "This is terrible, but I do not understand what it has to do with us needing help now." That question revealed more than any accusation could have. It explains what the money represents. It represents a property sale. No, it represents 40 years of labor, years of debt repayment, and the first real security I have ever had. For decades, I confused silence with strength. I thought being strong meant carrying one more burden without asking anyone to see it. But hidden sacrifice can become dangerous. When people never see the cost, they may begin to believe there was no cost. Ross believed the ranch was an inheritance waiting for him because I never told him how close it came to being lost. My silence had been loving. It had not been harmless. "Ross, your father used to tell me I caused his anger," I said. "He said if I would only cooperate, he would not have to frighten me." "Mom, the other morning, you struck me and said, 'Look what you made me do.'" His face tightened. "I was angry. So was your father. I am not him." "No, you are not condemned to become him. But you repeated his behavior." Brier touched his arm. "He made one mistake. One act of violence is not small because it happened once. For months, you both questioned my judgment, treated my retirement as your property, and used my fear of losing my son to pressure me." "I said I was sorry," Ross said. "You said you were sorry and then asked for $50,000. I had spent years believing shame would destroy him. But shame does not have to be the end of a person. Sometimes it is the first honest response to seeing harm clearly." "I protected you from the truth about your father," I said. "I cannot protect you from the truth about yourself." Ross began to cry. "I didn't know." "You did not know about the past. You knew you were hurting me in the kitchen." He nodded slowly. "That mattered. A family history may explain where a pattern began, but it does not remove responsibility from the adult who repeats it." "What about the baby?" Brier asked. "Does none of this matter because you are angry with us?" "I am not punishing a child." "Then help us." "No." The word came easily now. "The trust is not only protecting money, it is protecting me from the belief that love requires surrender whenever someone says they need me." Ross looked at the documents. "What happens now?" "That depends on you. Are you cutting me out of your life?" "For now, I need distance. What happens later will be determined by your behavior, not by promises made in this room." "You brought witnesses because you are afraid of me." "Yes, I did not soften it. There are moments when protecting someone's feelings only continues the lie." "I do not want you to be afraid of me," he said. "Then become someone I do not have to fear." Brier stood first. "This is all very dramatic, Belinda. Families forgive. Forgiveness cannot be demanded by the person who benefits from it. What are we supposed to do now?" "Support yourselves." I placed a childhood photograph of Ross holding dandelions beside the police report. Both belonged to the same life. The boy had been real. So was the man who hit me. Real change would require Ross to stop using the first truth to excuse the second. He finally stood. "I need time. Take it." At the door, Brier turned. "And your grandchild? If there is a child, I hope you teach that child that no person is entitled to someone else's body, money, or obedience." After they left, Harold entered the living room. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Like I finally told the truth." "Do you think it changed him?" "I do not know." That was another lesson I was beginning to understand. Truth is not a lever we pull to control someone else's transformation. I could tell Ross what happened. I could show him the pattern. I could establish consequences. I could not choose what he did with that knowledge. For the first time in my life, I allowed that responsibility to remain where it belonged. For the first time in my life, I allowed that responsibility to remain where it belonged. And for 6 months, Ross did nothing with it that I could see. There were no more surprise visits, no angry voicemails, and no new letters from attorneys. After Harold handled the last formal communication about the trust, silence settled over the ranch. At first, I did not trust it. My life had been shaped by emergencies for so long that peace felt like a warning. When David was alive, I watched his moods. After he died, I watched the weather, the machinery, and the bills. Later, I watched my phone, waiting for Ross to call with another problem. Without those demands, I did not immediately feel free. I felt unnecessary. That frightened me more than I expected. For years, being needed had been the strongest proof I possessed that I was loved. I had confused dependence with closeness and sacrifice with belonging. When no one was asking anything from me, I had to face a question I had spent most of my life avoiding. Who was I when I was not solving someone else's crisis? I began packing the ranch house slowly. Every room held a version of me I was preparing to leave behind. In Ross's bedroom, beneath a box of school papers, I found a drawing he had made when he was 8. It showed the ranch beneath a bright yellow sun. David stood near the barn. Ross stood beside him. I was drawn in the center with arms much longer than any human arms should have. At the bottom, in uneven pencil, he had written, "My mom can fix anything." I sat on the edge of his old bed and cried. That child had believed I could repair every broken thing. I had begun believing it too. But fixing everything for someone can keep them from learning what their choices cost. It can also teach the fixer that love must always hurt. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was wrapping dishes in newspaper. Ross's name appeared on the screen. My body reacted before my mind did. My shoulders tightened. My heart began beating faster. I stared at the phone until the ringing nearly stopped. Then I answered. "Hello, Ross?" "Mom." His voice sounded quieter than I remembered. Not weak, not dramatic, just stripped of the confidence he used whenever he expected me to give in. "I heard you're moving," he said. "I am." "Where?" "I'm not ready to tell you." There was a pause. "Okay." It was the first boundary he had ever accepted without argument. That single word did not repair anything, but it made me listen. "I've been seeing a therapist," he said. I remained silent. "I know that does not change what I did." "No, it does not. And I am not calling to ask you to pretend it does." His words sounded practiced, but not polished. They sounded like sentences he had struggled to say without adding an excuse. "What happened?" I asked. "I left Brier." The newspaper slipped from my hand. "Why?" He took a breath. "There was no baby." For a moment, I thought I had misunderstood him. "What do you mean?" "She was never pregnant." The room became very still. Ross explained that Brier had invented the pregnancy after I refused to transfer the ranch money. She believed the possibility of a grandchild would reach the part of me that anger and intimidation could not. "She showed me a photograph of a positive test," he said. "She told me she had gone to a doctor. Every time I asked about an appointment, there was a reason I could not come." "And you believed her?" "I wanted to." That answer felt more honest than denial would have. Sometimes the most effective lie is the one that lets people keep believing what they already want. Ross wanted the house. He wanted a child. He wanted to imagine himself as a provider without first becoming financially responsible. Brier's story gave moral urgency to their demands and allowed him to treat my refusal as cruelty. "How did you learn the truth?" I asked. "I found messages between her and a friend. She said she was waiting to see whether you gave us the money before deciding how long she could keep the story going." I closed my eyes. Even after everything, the calculations stunned me. "What did she say when you confronted her?" "She said she did it for us. She said you were selfish and needed to be pushed." "And what did you say?" Ross was quiet for so long that I wondered whether the call had dropped. "I told her she did not make me hit you." That was the first sentence that made me believe this conversation might be different. Ross could have built his defense around Brier. She had lied and encouraged his resentment. But she had not controlled his fist. That difference mattered more than expected. "I chose to listen to her," he continued. "I chose to believe I had been deprived. I liked thinking you owed me because it made wanting your money feel justified. I sat down at the kitchen table. I blamed Dad for a while too, he said. After what you told me, I kept thinking maybe I became this way because of him. Did that make you feel better? For a few days. And then, my therapist asked whether understanding the pattern changed who made the choice. I let that answer settle. Family history can explain wounds and learned patterns. But explanation becomes dangerous when it becomes a place to hide from responsibility. Ross had inherited a model of anger. He had still chosen to use it. I moved into a smaller apartment, he said. I sold the car. I am working with a financial counselor. I have been looking at every expense I used to call necessary. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to know I am changing. Are you changing because you believe I will give you money later? No. Then understand that I will not. I do. Not for a house. Not for an emergency created by your spending. Not because you apologize. I understand. I listened for disappointment in his voice. There was sadness, but no argument. Why did you call? I asked. To apologize without asking for anything. Then apologize. His breathing became unsteady. Mom, I hit you because you would not give me money. I tried to scare you into doing what I wanted. Afterward, I blamed you because admitting what I had done would have meant seeing myself clearly. I used the story about a baby to pressure you. I treated the ranch, your work, and your future as if they belonged to me. He paused. I am sorry. I did not rescue him from the silence that followed. The old version of me would have said, "It's all right," even though it was not. I would have softened his shame because watching my son suffer felt unbearable. But an apology loses meaning when the injured person is forced to comfort the person who caused the injury. Thank you for saying it clearly, I replied. Do you forgive me? I do not know yet, he inhaled sharply. I almost changed my answer. Then I remembered that forgiveness offered to stop someone else's pain is not always forgiveness. Sometimes it is another form of surrender. I want to rebuild our relationship, he said. Rebuilding is not the same as returning to what we had. I know. No, Ross. I need you to hear everything before you agree. He became quiet. If we try, you will never ask me for money. You will not question my financial decisions. You will not ask for my address until I choose to give it to you. If you become angry or raise your voice, the conversation ends. I understand. If you threaten me, pressure me, or appear at my home without permission, contact stops. Yes, trust will be based on what you do consistently, not on what you promise today. I know. And therapy cannot become evidence you present to earn access to me. You continue because you need to change, not because you expect a reward. I will. I am willing to speak by phone occasionally. That is all I can offer. Thank you. His gratitude made me want to give him more. That was the old instinct returning. The belief that if someone accepted a boundary politely, I should reward them by weakening it. I resisted. A second chance is not unlimited access. It is a controlled opportunity for new behavior to appear. Ross called again 2 weeks later. The conversation lasted 8 minutes. He asked how I was feeling and did not ask where I was moving. A month later, he called after a difficult therapy session. He began explaining that stress at work had contributed to his behavior, then stopped himself. That sounds like an excuse, he said. Let me start again. That mattered more to me than a perfect speech. Real change is usually quieter than people expect. It does not arrive in one emotional conversation. It appears in interrupted habits, respected boundaries, and choices made when no reward is guaranteed. I also learned that reconciliation and forgiveness are not the same thing. I could release some of my anger without giving Ross a key to my home. I could hope he became healthier without making my safety depend on that hope. I could love my son and still refuse to be alone with him. Those truths once would have sounded contradictory to me. Now they felt like the first honest definition of love I had ever known. As I packed the last box from his childhood room, I placed the drawing of the ranch on top. My motherly instinct still wanted to fix everything. But Ross's life was no longer mine to repair. My responsibility was to protect the life I still had, and to watch, from a safe distance, whether my son was finally learning to repair his own. The last box from Ross's childhood room went into the moving truck beside the drawing that said I could fix anything, and as the ranch disappeared behind me, I finally accepted that the life ahead did not need to be another repair job. Millfield was 2 hours away, far enough to feel safe without feeling erased from the world. My new house sat on a quiet corner beneath 2 mature oak trees. It was smaller than the ranch house, but every room felt like mine in a way the old place never had. In Millfield, the spare bedroom had no assigned burden. I turned it into an art studio. I set an easel beside the east-facing window and opened a box of paints I had purchased without asking whether the money should be saved for someone else. It felt rebellious. I had wanted to paint when I was 17. Then came marriage, the ranch, Ross, debt, illness, and decades of practical decisions. I postponed the desire so many times that eventually I stopped calling it a desire. It became something foolish I used to think about. My first painting was an oak tree. The trunk leaned too far left, the branches looked like frightened hands, and the sky was a blue no real sky had ever been. I laughed, then cried. Failure felt different when no one's survival depended on it. On the ranch, a mistake could mean a broken fence, a lost animal, or a bill I could not pay. In that studio, a mistake was only paint. I could cover it, change it, or leave it imperfect. That freedom was new to me. For years, I had treated every desire as something that had to wait until everyone else was safe, satisfied, and settled. In Millfield, I began to understand that my life was not the leftover portion of theirs. So was silence. For most of my life, quiet meant I had forgotten something. A gate was open. A payment was overdue. Someone was angry and waiting for me to discover why. In Millfield, quiet meant the morning was mine. I drank coffee on the screened porch and watched neighbors walk their dogs. Children rode bicycles beneath the oak trees. No one knew what the ranch had sold for. No one knew about the trust or the hospital photographs. They knew me only as Belinda, the woman who had moved into the corner house. At first, that anonymity felt strange. I had always been identified through someone else. David Patterson's wife, Ross Patterson's mother, the widow who kept the ranch alive. Without those roles, I wondered whether there was enough of me left to build a person. That is why this ending matters so much to me at When Family Breaks One. Stories about betrayal often focus on the moment the victim fights back, but survival is not complete when the threat ends. The harder work begins afterward, when a person must learn how to live without organizing every choice around fear. Belinda did not merely protect money. She had to rediscover permission. Permission to rest. Permission to spend on herself. Permission to enjoy something with no practical purpose. Permission to say no without preparing a courtroom argument for why she deserved to say it. I joined a painting class at the community center. Some had retired from demanding careers. Some had cared for sick spouses. Others had raised children who no longer called unless they needed something. We did not introduce ourselves through our wounds. We mixed colors, complained about perspective, and laughed at paintings that looked nothing like the objects in front of us. That companionship healed what confrontation could not. At the garden cafe, the owner, Janet, asked whether I was retired. Learning how, I told her. Retirement was not simply the end of work. For me, it was the end of believing usefulness was the only reason I deserved a place in the world. Ross and I continued speaking by phone under the boundaries I had established. He did not know my address. He did not ask for money. He continued therapy and began paying down his debts. Trust did not return because he sounded sincere. It grew, if it grew at all, through small choices repeated over time. I did not confuse progress with completion. Had I welcomed him back too quickly, I might have taught him that the right apology erased the need for change. By keeping distance, I allowed him to experience a truth I had once protected him from. Love does not cancel consequences. I also learned that forgiveness and reconciliation are not the same thing. Forgiveness, when it comes, may free the injured person from carrying anger every day. Reconciliation requires safety, responsibility, consistency, and the willingness of both people to accept a different relationship from the one they had before. No one is entitled to immediate closeness because they are sorry. I could love Ross and still refuse to give him a key. I could hope he healed without making my peace depend on his success. I could remain his mother without returning to the role of rescuer. Once, those truths would have sounded cold. Now, they felt honest. The ranch money helped purchase the house, medical security, and time. But I no longer thought of it only as money. It was stored labor. It was every frozen morning, repaired fence, debt payment, and night I lay awake wondering whether I could keep going. Money can become a method of control, but it can also become choice. It can pay for safe housing, independent advice, transportation, healthcare, and the ability to leave a dangerous situation. That does not make a person greedy. Wanting security after a lifetime of sacrifice is not selfish. One evening, I sat on the porch while the sun lowered behind the trees. My phone was quiet. No one was demanding a solution. No one was threatening to withdraw love. For the first time, I understood that boundaries had not destroyed my family. They had exposed what the relationships had become and created the only conditions under which something healthier might grow. A boundary is not revenge. It is a clear statement that love does not require access to your body, home, money, or peace. I had made mistakes. I had hidden too much about David. I had protected Ross from consequences and confused silence with love. But responsibility is not the same as blame. David's violence belonged to David. Brier's manipulation belonged to Brier. Ross's choices belonged to Ross. The future belonged to me. At 63, I planted herbs beside the porch. I planned a trip I had postponed for 20 years. I painted another oak tree, and this time the trunk stood upright. Brier had told me I would be dead soon anyway. She was wrong. I was not dying. I was finally learning how to live. Do you believe Belinda was right to give Ross a limited second chance? Or should she have ended the relationship completely? Please share your view in the comments so others can reflect on it too, and subscribe to @WhenFamilyBreaks1 for more stories about family, accountability, boundaries, and healing. Ketok. What stays with me most about Belinda's story is not the moment she protected the ranch money or the day Ross finally admitted what he had done. It is the painful realization that she had spent most of her life confusing love with sacrifice. She survived David's violence, paid the debts he left behind, saved the ranch, and protected Ross from truths she believed would damage him. Yet because Ross never saw the cost of those sacrifices, he slowly began to treat them as something he was entitled to receive. That is what makes this story so heartbreaking. Ross did not stop seeing Belinda as his mother in a single moment. It happened gradually, through repeated conversations in which her needs became smaller and his demands became more important. By the time he raised his fist, the emotional boundary had already been crossed many times. But Belinda's response matters just as much as the betrayal. She did not answer violence with violence. She sought medical care, preserved evidence, contacted a qualified attorney, protected her assets, and created distance from the people pressuring her. Most importantly, she stopped allowing guilt to make decisions for her. I'm at When Family Breaks One, and the deepest lesson I take from this story is that boundaries are not the opposite of love. Sometimes they are the only thing preventing love from becoming permission for abuse. We can apply this lesson in our own lives by paying attention whenever someone creates unnecessary urgency around our money, property, time, or decisions. A healthy request allows questions. It allows independent advice. It accepts that the answer may be no. Manipulation, on the other hand, often uses guilt, secrecy, fear, or threats to force agreement. We should also remember that an apology is only the beginning. Real accountability appears through changed behavior, accepted consequences, and respect for boundaries over time. Forgiveness does not require immediate reconciliation, and family membership does not guarantee unlimited access to another person's home, finances, or emotional life. Belinda did not choose money over her son. She chose safety over coercion. She chose truth over denial. And when she eventually offered Ross a limited opportunity to rebuild trust, she did so without surrendering the peace she had fought to reclaim. Her new life in Millfield proves that starting over is not reserved for the young. At 63, Belinda was not reaching the end of her story. She was finally becoming the author of it. Do you believe Belinda was right to give Ross a limited second chance? Please share your answer in the comments so everyone can read and consider different viewpoints. And subscribe to @WhenFamilyBreaks1 to support the channel and help us continue creating meaningful stories about family, boundaries, accountability, and healing.